Am I the a-hole for not paying for my niece's operation with my wedding fund? I, female 30, have an older brother, Thomas, 43. His first wife passed, leaving him with my niece, and he remarried 2 years later. My dad and uncle inherited 2 lands from my grandfather. Dad left his land after it was split from me and Thomas, but Thomas sold it without my knowledge and kept all the money for himself. I couldn't do anything about it because I barely had money for college, and because sister-in-law said if I tried to do anything about it, I'd never see my niece. But I went no contact and couldn't establish a relationship with my niece anyway, even though I used to take care of her when she was little. She's now 16, born with a health condition, and had her first operation at the age of 1. I later inherited the other land my uncle had after he disowned Thomas. I sold it and spent money on necessities, and used the rest to fund my wedding soon. Thomas reached out recently and we spoke a few times. He kept mentioning my niece struggling with her health condition again. He asked if I wanted to meet her, but I wanted time. After a few more conversations, he said he needs help paying for her upcoming surgery, and asked if I could help with money. He brought up uncle's land and the money I put aside for my wedding. I was shocked. He asked where he knew all that, and he said he's been talking to a mutual friend, and he told him everything. This mutual friend said Thomas spent the money from the land on several expensive golfing trips and anniversary celebrations with his wife, and is now in debt, struggling to pay for my niece's medical expenses. I said sorry, but there was nothing I can do to help. He kept trying to convince me that my wedding can wait and my niece should matter to me, reminding me that I'm the only family he got left, and I should consider helping him for my niece's sake, not his. I reminded him of what he did to me years ago, and how he left me to struggle for myself. I said he was lucky I didn't sue him for the money he owed me, but he said that this was his wife's idea, and he was stupid and regretted listening to her. Then said I could still sue them, but since they'll go to jail because they can't pay me back, then my niece becomes my responsibility. He said I could hate him all I want, but he's just asking for my niece. He pressured me to go see her, but I felt highly uncomfortable doing that. We had a heated argument after he tried to get my fiancé to postpone the wedding. I ended up telling him to leave, but he said it was okay, we'll talk again. But I said all I had to say. He had to let my friends know. They asked what's wrong with me prioritizing wedding over my niece. Thomas then emailed me saying I can't blame him for trying to help his kid, and that he knew I'm a better person than he is, and I will do this out of goodness of my heart. He said he'd pay me back with his wife's inheritance once her father passes, which he doesn't know when, but he hoped soon enough. I'm still dumbfounded by what he said. Thing is, I've always wanted a good wedding, and because I got stuck with student loans for so long, I still live in a small place, still haven't gone on trips I wanted, still haven't achieved most of what I wanted. I'm 30 and feel like life already passed me by. If I let Thomas get my wedding fund, then I'll have to start saving for my wedding. Now for the top comments. Not stay home. Anyone who's harassing you about this is not your friend. It may be that he has given them a twisted version of his narrative and you can clear that up. But if they continue to harass you about delaying your wedding and giving your money to your brother for his child, then they're definitely not your friends. OP, listen to the above. Also, if you do change your mind about helping financially with your niece's surgery, ask for a copy of the bill and pay the hospital or treatment facility directly. Do not give your brother money, as he's untrustworthy. Also, make sure you get your brother and his wife to sign notarized statements stating that they owe you that money back, with interest, or you will never see it again. Funny the brother hasn't mentioned the money as a loan anywhere, except the father-in-law comment. He and his wife, fully expect the money as a righteous gift. The money stole from Opie should have been put aside for the medical needs they knew were coming. Not Day-Hole. Not Day-Hole. He said that this was his wife's idea, and he was stupid and regretted listening to her. If him stealing your money was all his wife's idea and has regretted it since, why didn't he give you a call prior to being in debt and his daughter needing a surgery? Someone who is truly guilted would have got in contact sooner just to apologize. Don't give him the money believing that he's going to let you see your niece or have any sort of family dynamic with him. As soon as he'd have the money, he'd disappear again. Don't put yourself through such emotional and financial turmoil. If you have rented a food, venue, cake, etc., have passwords with the vendors in case he even tries to call them saying that the wedding has been postponed/cancelled. He's crossing lines by talking to your circle. OP, just say the money he stole from you is the money you already gave him. Not Day-Hole. He sold his land and squandered the money carelessly, knowing his daughter has a health condition that would require further medical treatment. You were cut off from seeing your niece for all these years, And now she's basically a stranger to you that just happens to share some DNA. If you had been part of her life all along, it would be different. As it stands, he was irresponsible in planning to care for his daughter's medical issues. And now he's manipulating you into giving up part of your inheritance and delay your wedding to cover for his failure. You're definitely not a a-hole. Next story. Am I the a-hole for not paying for my sick brother's chemo treatment after receiving a large inheritance from my grandfather? I am a 26-year-old woman. When my grandfather passed away, he wrote in his will that his inheritance would be divided amongst his wife and his oldest grandchild, me. He believed my brother would be way too young at the time of his death to inherit any money. He was a very wealthy man, but no money went to my parents, because frankly they did not have the best relationship with him, especially my mom, who is his daughter. Not that they needed it anyways. My parents have plenty of money already. I spent a lot of time with my grandpa, and we got along well. I'd say he even parented me better than my parents ever could, and I was devastated when he died. When I got my share of the inheritance, I expected a lot of family who never talked to me before to suddenly start asking for favors. And they did, especially my parents for some reason. The final straw came when my mother asked me if I could pay for my brother's, his 15, chemo treatments, considering that I was technically rich now. I had never had a large amount of money, even with having wealthy parents. And as soon as I turned 18, they kicked me out and decided I needed to live on my own. My father gave me $1,700, and that was it, and they hardly talked to me. In fact, you could say they are the reason my grandfather gave me this money in the first place. He would always bring up how I seemed to be struggling. Finally, I thought of this, turned to my mother and basically said that my brother was not my responsibility, and that they have plenty of money to pay for his chemo treatments. Because now that I'm basically set for life, I would like to spend my money getting myself together and preparing for my own children. I told them I still loved him, but I just couldn't take on the responsibility of a child that I didn't even birth. Heck, I spent most of my childhood raising him when they didn't want to, and I was done being responsible for him. Of course, this didn't go over well with her, and she started yelling and cursing me out over the phone. I hung up, not wanting to hear another word of it. Over several days, I kept getting messages and calls, even Facebook posts of other family members calling me ungrateful, evil, and spoiled. Truthfully though, I knew in my heart that this was probably the best decision I could make for myself. I finally have the chance to be selfish. I didn't want to be used by my parents anymore. My brother will be fine as they have the money to do it themselves. They just want to once again throw that responsibility on me. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. This isn't even about affordability. As you mentioned, they can afford a treatment. They're just cheap and entitled and don't want to pay for it themselves. This isn't your issue. For anyone coming at you, remind them that your parents can more than afford a treatment. It's not your kid. Then cut ties as they have proven they aren't worth your time. Probably as their part in the inheritance. Not the a-hole. Not the a-hole. A lot of these commenters must have missed the part that said my parents have plenty of money already. Some people's children. Shaking my damn head. Exactly this. And even if they don't, then it is still unfair to expect Opie to pay. Not the a-hole. When your grandfather passed away, his inheritance became yours. It doesn't matter one bit whether you inherited it, earned it, or won it in a lottery. It is your money, and you're not responsible for your brother's treatment. Your parents sound like massive a-holes for trying to bully you into it, especially as they can afford it themselves. You've done nothing wrong here. Next story is titled, Am I the a-hole for leaving my sister and her kids at the mall? I, 23 female, moved out of my parents' house 2 years ago because my sister, 32, and her husband, 33, have made a house uninhabitable if you aren't catering to his kids. They're loud, throw tantrums at a drop of a hat, and are very needy. I've asked to not be involved with their kids, as I have severe trauma and issues with spending long periods of time with especially small children that need to rely on adults for most things. My sister used to get on my back for not accepting her stepkids, when in reality I don't accept most children, as they cause panic attacks and worse when left in my care or presence. Recently, I've been trying to rekindle our relationship with obvious baby steps. I invited my sister out to the mall and asked that it just be us. She agreed, and we met up this Saturday. However, she brought her stepdaughter Cassandra, 7, and her stepson Caleb, 10. I tried to grin and bear it, but things got to a pretty unacceptable level for me pretty quickly. My sister kept picking up items and then leaving me at the register with her kids to pay with my card. Or she sent her kids up to me and telling them to ask Auntie to buy these for you. And I didn't want to look like an A, so I'd buy the items. She then left me alone with the kids at the food court while she stopped, but she told me she'd be right back. Ended up spending 45 minutes shopping around. When we finally met back up, I was fed up and told her I was leaving. She asked me to let her take the kids home so we could shop and hang out, but I was already over it. My mother and father are calling me an a-hole for leaving her alone with the kids, and her husband is calling me a hateful witch for not accepting his kids and not stepping up as their only aunt. He doesn't talk to his sisters, and I'm my sister's only sibling. Am I the a-hole? Edit. I do not mistreat these kids or ignore them. I send birthday/Christmas presents and birthday cards as often as my wallet allows. They know I exist, and I plan to handle my trauma, again baby steps, at a pace that's appropriate for me and be more involved eventually. Now for the comments. Not an a-hole. Your sister wasn't there to spend time with you. She was there to take advantage of you. At least now Opie can move on from this relationship knowing she tried. Not an a-hole. She didn't want to spend time with you. She wanted someone to pay for stuffs. I would go low contact on the whole family, to be honest. He doesn't talk to his sisters, and I'm my sister's only sibling. Join the rest of the family. Next story. Am I the a-hole for asking my fiancé to get a house of her own? So me 27 male and my fiancé 27 female are getting married in a year or two. We aren't in a rush. We've been talking about finances and stuff like that. And we've been having some honest conversations about the future, specifically what we do in case of a divorce. The main sticking point is the house. In the event of a divorce and she wants half the house, which I think is unreasonable given that I paid a mortgage. It's now paid off, and it's my name on the title deed. But I understand where she's coming from. If we broke up 10 years from now, then she'd have no major assets to speak of, which would be bad for her. I get that. So I suggested a solution. As we both make good money, and right now she can easily afford a down payment on a house of her own. She has good credit, and so it's going to be easy for her to get a mortgage with favorable terms. If the terms of the contract are good, she might be able to rent out the house as she pays off the mortgage, and pay the mortgage with rent money. This, in my eyes, is a win-win scenario. If we stay together, she gets an asset that she can sell or do whatever she wants with. And if we break up, she has a house. But she's having none of it, and tells me that I can't tell her how to spend her money. I mean, fair enough. So I asked her to sign a prenup, which basically said that in the event of a divorce, the house would be mine and all other assets of any would be split equitably. She's refusing to sign that as well, saying that I should just trust her. I do, but having a backup plan would make me feel much better and calm my nerves. I said that I'm not going to put myself in a situation where there's even a remote chance that I might lose the house that I've worked hard for. It's one of my red lines. So am I the a-hole? Also, we live together right now, and we split everything 50-50 including housework. We cook for each other on alternate days and we eat out for one day. Not the a-hole. She didn't put a dime into the house. Why should she expect to get half of it if you split up? Marriage law is weird. She wouldn't get half the house, but she would be entitled to half of the appreciation of the house. So if the house is worth $100,000 when we get married and if it's worth $600 when we split up, then I'd be on the hook for $250,000, which I might not have in cash. So I might have to sell the house to pay the $250,000. All that depends on how much the house appreciates. If you are already planning a divorce, then do not get married without a prenup. That would be a terrible financial decision. No one plans to get a divorce when they marry, just like no one plans to have a house fire or for a tornado to rip the roof off the house. Yet sometimes it happens, and if it does happen, it's dumb not to make sure that your assets are protected. Info. What would you do with the house? Why not let her buy half of your house or you win this equally? Or sell it and buy one together? If you're going to retain sole ownership, then she shouldn't pay anything for maintenance/renovation/upkeep. Is this your plan? Now for the last story. Am I the a-hole for refusing to pay back my parents for sending me to a private school when I was 12/13? So, my 17 female parents used to be very strict growing up. When I first started secondary school, I used to be a rebellious child, which is something I have always admitted and apologized for. It is also a phase I have grown out of a pretty long time. Because of my actions, My parents decided it would be a good idea to send me to a strict private school which they think improved my behavior, but in all honesty, I think I've just grown up. My dad first brought this up a few years ago when I was 15, that I need to pay back $20,000 for the school fees. And at first, I genuinely thought he was joking. But now he's bringing it up again and again, especially now that I'm earning my own money. I would maybe understand them if I was still misbehaving, but I literally get straight A's and A+. Haven't had a detention in forever and never answer them back. I don't understand why my parents are asking me to pay this money, when they're the ones that sent me there in the first place. I can't believe I'm already in debt by my own parents, and I haven't even started college yet. Would love some input if I'm overreacting, and how I should approach them when they bring it up again. Not today home. My flip response is laughing in their face about expecting to be paid back, as a way to approach them bringing it up again. I guess reality would be no. I feel you made a choice to do that I was a child then. You weren't in debt to them. Tell them to take it small claims. Not really. I hope he doesn't owe this money. Also, they sent her for being rebellious, which was probably normal behavior. Not today home. And don't even think about paying anything. That was their choice. Until you were legally adult, they are responsible to feed and clothe you, provide safe roof over your head, and education. Not today home. Your parents were the ones who chose to send you to the school. You didn't really have a choice. And while you were a rebellious child, but so are a lot of children. Talk to them and explain that since it was their idea to send you to the school, then it is on them to pay for it. As paying for things that they believe would better their child is, in a way, their jobs as parents.